and good evening, depending on where everybody's joining. I think we had a pretty impressive global registration happening for this forum today. But welcome to today's session. I'm Manvir Sahota, and I'll be moderating today's fireside chat on how financial services companies can optimize costs with AI for prod. And a few quick logistic items before we get started. This session will be recorded. Just making sure, and we'll share the recording out of the after the event. The chat and the Q&A are open, and we'll have a team on site to be able to handle and help address your questions. And also, depending on time, we'll go ahead and actually take some of the questions live in the session as well. Please drop those questions in as we go, and we'll do our best to make sure we get to them. Today's event is brought to you by ResolveAI. ResolveAI is your AI for prod. Agents that work across code, infrastructure, telemetry, and knowledge to increase reliability, optimize production systems, and improve engineering productivity. Our goal here at ResolveAI is to help engineering teams operate production fluently with an easy-to-use agentic system that abstracts away the complexity of fragmented context, expertise, and tools. Companies like MSCI, Coinbase, DoorDash, Zscaler, GameTime, and many more use ResolveAI to automate alert triage, accelerate incident resolution, simplify production debugging, and codify production knowledge. And you can always learn more at resolve.ai. And with that, I would love to welcome today's panelists. So we have a very impressive lineup across the engineering leadership spectrum and I'll make sure that each of those individuals has time to introduce themselves. But with that, I'm excited to be joined today by Jeremy Rishel, CTO of SoFi, Sandeep, Contractor, Managing Director at MSCI, Nitesh Kumar, VP of Engineering at Affirm, and Mayank Agarwal, who's the founder and CTO at ResolveAI as well. It's a packed discussion today, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. So to kick things off, I would love for each of the panelists to start sharing a little bit about who you are from each of you. And in about 45 seconds or so, introduce yourself, your role, what team's focus is, that your team's focus is, and as an icebreaker, what's that one accomplishment from the last year that you're genuinely proud of that your team delivered and why it mattered? So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Sandeep to kick us off.
Yeah, hi, everyone, Sandeep, and thank you, Resolve, for inviting me to this chat. And just a quick introduction about me: over 30 years in financial industry space, always running engineering teams to create complex enterprise financial products and applications, and lately also responsible for infrastructure. What we have been doing after the Gen AI tools became more commercialized, I would say at the start of 24, what we have achieved in the last, I would say, 9 months post the MCP Anthropic protocol commercialization is we have achieved almost significant velocity gains in our product development lifecycle, starting with the inception all the way to the launch. There have been some learnings throughout, but I think what we have been proud of is we have been almost able to get the products out at 2x, 3x pace all the way from inception to launch. So that's what I would summarize the last 1 year as. Over to you, back to you.
Awesome. No, Sandeep, you, I think, are raising a lot of eyebrows here within the audience, probably of just like being able to get those productivity gains. And we're going to go ahead and peel on that onion a little bit more later in the show.
Sure.
So, Jeremy, go ahead and passing it on to you.
I think you're on mute.
Oh, here we go. Thanks for having me. I'm Jeremy, CTO at SoFi. I've been here about 3.5 years. This is my first experience in financial services. Before that, led engineering or product teams at Splunk, DoorDash, Twitter, and some startups on the East Coast. I'm at SoFi. I'm responsible for all the product development engineering, as well as our corporate technology group and our cybersecurity group. So I kind of oversee all the things that we're building and delivering to retail members and to B2B clients. If you look at the last year, it was a very exciting year for us. I think we accelerated our product development in ways that were kind of unique in the history of the company. To pick a specific example, the regulatory environment shifted last spring, and banks in the US became permitted to re-engage in crypto activities. And it's something that our members have wanted in our product. It's something that we've been looking forward to getting back into when when the regulatory environment was permissive of that. And so we really accelerated efforts to do that and shipped our kind of re-entered the market with a very robust crypto product offering at the end of last year. So great to see things like that be able to go from idea to fruition to delivering value to customers in record time.
That's awesome, Jeremy. And we'll come back to some of those examples as well, like what it meant to actually get that done and how you're now managing those systems once they're out in production. Nitesh, go ahead and passing it on to you.
Awesome. I'm Nitesh. Excited to be here. Thank you so much for organizing this event and having me here. I've been working at Affirm for about a decade now. So when I joined, the company was about 70 people. We've grown to about 2,500. So lots of learnings from that time. And my background is in machine learning. That's what I did in grad school, and then started working at startups and expanded over to do a lot of engineering. At Affirm, I'm responsible for our checkout pillar across engineering, which is everything from seeing the Affirm button to checking out with Affirm. We build a lot of technology that supports that, and also the intelligence or the machine learning decisioning that powers that checkout experience at Affirm. The accomplishment over the last year, this will sound very boring going after Sandeep and Jeremy, I believe, but I'll say it because I'm very proud of that. Black Friday, Cyber Monday tends to be a very busy season for us. Our business tends to correlate quite heavily with how consumers shop and use Affirm. So this time when we were scaling up for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, we needed fewer heroics, and we had a lot of manual systems that we had automated to scale up to the right amount necessary. And we were very optimized from the perspective of efficiency in how our systems held up, and the auto scaling that we did that gave us a lot of confidence in maintaining our systems. In addition to that, we were able to ship about like 30 to 40% decrease in latency for checkout right before Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So, say this time Cyber Monday, BFCM happened around December. So it's really fresh off my mind, and yeah, counts for the biggest win last year.
Yeah, Sandeep, that's actually pretty impressive. The fact that you were able to pull that off in time for like a big season for you guys. So like I'd actually give a lot more credit to what you guys were able to accomplish. Awesome. Mayank, I'll go ahead and have you wrap up with the introductions and we'll get on with the rest of the show.
Yeah, it's great. I'm Mayank. I'm one of the founders and CTO at ResolveAI. Worked in developer tooling and monitoring systems all of my career. This is my second startup in the space. Previous startup was called Omnition, where we co-created OpenTelemetry and built a distributed tracing backend, was acquired by Splunk, where eventually I became the architect overseeing all of their observability product lines, worked very closely with Jeremy also there. And saw the huge amount of toil that developers had to take on to ship software to production, to keep it running healthy and to keep it compliant and secure and efficient. So left Splunk and started Resolve early 2024. Resolve is almost 120 people now. We build AI agents for automating production activities, everything from on-call and incident troubleshooting to proactive optimization and continuous refinement. And very proud of how rapidly and how fast the team has been able to build out this very, very complex system. The whole AI space has been moving almost, it seems, 5 to 10 times faster than any era before, and you have to stay on top of every innovation coming out. And the fact that it's objectively this company is moving 10 times faster and growing 10 times faster than our previous company. So very proud of the full stack offering that we have been able to build up, all the way from deep integration into the workflow, into the underlying systems engineering required to integrate into systems of record, the agentic orchestration that's needed to make these kind of complex agents, and also the work at the modeling layer that's needed to deal with very specific data sets. So very exciting time to be in the software engineering space.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for the introductions today. Let's go ahead and kick it off. So over the past 2 years, we've seen top-down mandates drive AI adoption. And the first wave was almost always lands in like the development side, right? So coding agents, code review, and developer productivity tools. What measurable impact have you seen so far and what surprised you once you tried to operationalize those gains inside a regulated environment? I know Jeremy and Sandeep, you both touched on aspects of this. So Jeremy, I'd love to have you open the response.
Yeah, I mean, as everybody here knows, developer kind of velocity and productivity is sort of notoriously difficult to capture in a single number. But in looking at the our activities, I think it's very clear that through widespread adoption of AI in kind of coding and development activities last year, we've seen anywhere from 20 to 50+% velocity improvement across teams. Um, and I'm a big believer, we're all believers that we can push even further with that as we get sort of more of the development process covered. What has surprised me maybe a little bit is at our scale of on the order of 1,000+ developers is how important kind of training and some sort of framework to help drive kind of adoption really is. Like there's a pretty wide spectrum. Some people are early adopters on their own and are really help figuring out how to make use of the latest and greatest tools. But there's a lot of developers who are will really benefit from kind of sustained like training, education, and so forth. And so really leaning in on like how we do that at scale has been important to getting adoption essentially ubiquitous across our teams.
Cool. Anybody else would love to weigh into that, Sandeep or Mayank, or?
Yeah, I can weigh in a little bit on that. See, we initially, there were a lot of expectations, but in 2024, and then there is expectation and the reality gap because the context window was small, and of course, as Jeremy alluded, overly focused on the development part, but it's the entire product life cycle. And what happened is that post MCP commercialization, I would say in March 25, we could now build, and of course, context windows also had increased. We could build the context of prototypes done in Lovable and Figma, those kind of tools by the product and the analyst, product group and the analyst who we work with closely to create. I'm in charge of private assets product line at MSCI. Then what we could build that in Cursor Copilot because those were the tools we chose to write code off. We could put entire Git URLs in the Cursor Copilot, which could build the entire code context. Jira tickets were, or the specs were able to build that context. And the most important data models, because being a data company, there is just a lot of structured data that we have which we operate on to actually create our products. So we were able to generate now the full stack code by mid 25. And that is where the real velocity gain came because the full stack code included the front end code, the middleware code, as well as the SQL code. And what we are as a company, we are very security, compliance, regulation aware. And that is why even when cloud became a thing where we wanted to exit some of our data centers, we already were prepared with that innovation. So we already started top down building those controls. Some of the surprises, I would say, I think it's the validation phase of the generated code because with the velocity that we generate the code, it's almost like opening the floodgates, right? So the developers have to be ready to review that code before we merge and test and all that, right? So I think that was where another thing is the initial assumption in late 24 or mid 24 was that the greenfield initiatives benefited more. But actually, what we found in 25 is the killer use case is the legacy modernization. That is where we are seeing almost 10x gain to actually modernize the legacy. I would say the unaddressed area we are already started to work with Resolve, which is after the code is released. That is the whole agentic SRE that we are working with Resolve on. And some of the things that we want to build those agents in DevSecOps pipeline. And in future, the North Star is, of course, self-healing, creating those PRs. So I think that is where we'll see the maximum. We have already seen significant ROI and metric improvement this year on all the DORA metric, but I think the other metric improvements like MTTR will come with agentic SRE.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Sandeep. We'll definitely come back to that discussion very soon. But before we move on to the next question, I do have a follow-up for the room for the audience here, right? Like, yeah, we saw the AI adoption, like, happen with like I said, on the development side of the house. Like, obviously, you're seeing the productivity gains, you're seeing the release velocity, all that kind of, that all that momentum and the success metrics that you called out. But like, how is that shifting now the board level priorities as you think about AI? Within your organizations, and what are those implications of those priorities on your engineering teams, right? So because obviously the board is looking at this and it's like, well, we're seeing the gains and this is proving out well, so like how is that shifting, that top down mandate coming down now?
Uh,
Yeah, who wants to take that one? Go ahead.
I'll let Nitesh answer that. I mean, I want to
I can
let
take a
him and
crack at
then.
that. So,
Oh,
let me just connect that with something interesting from the last question that you had, which was around the surprise. And maybe in hindsight, it's not a surprise. There's a little bit of mythical man month that we saw coming into picture when we initially adopted AI. So when we adopted AI, we were looking at, okay, we are big believers, and we were looking at metrics like, okay, lines of code generated by AI and like how many are you accepting, etc. And those metrics were going up, but we're not seeing those gains follow through into the end-to-end number of PRs committed or like number of PRs actually merged and deployed. So it was a good learning to understand that you have to be patient, create the space, and make sure that you actually create the right systems in place so that AI can work its magic. Because currently your systems are much more aligned to making humans do most of the work and not quite aligned to AI do a lot of that work. And that connects back to like, something that you were asking about, which is how does with these gains, what is senior leadership or the board telling us? I think if you think back from the data that we are seeing, the question becomes, okay, what all becomes things that AI can rapidly or massively increase the deploy velocity, not incrementally, but by an order of magnitude. And if you think that the premise is realizing that sort of order of magnitude gain, you have to work backwards and understand exactly what sort of changes and processes that you want to make today. What sort of upfront investment do you want to do today across your software development life cycle so that you can get to that order of magnitude increase in velocity? And that's what we're doing. So you look at the roadmap, we have like these roadmaps planned. It may not be the right thing to change course midway on a roadmap on like an ongoing project to introduce AI late into the cycle because it may even slow things down. So you have to be quite strategic into picking the right kind of projects and putting the right kind of investments upfront so that your design takes it into account that you have AI, you have these tools that can significantly make your SDLC much faster.
Awesome. I'm going to ask just a general consensus from the room, like Jeremy, Nitesh, Sandeep, and Mayank are like, would you generally agree with that consensus? Like maybe a 5 second or 10 second response, like anybody?
I think the expectations have gone up. We definitely, now that we can innovate faster, we definitely want to have ambitious goals, and we have startups to compete with, especially in the industry that we are in, who are now able to develop 5 to 10x faster with significantly less investment and less number of engineers, where the anecdotes could go as high as 20 developers needed versus now I can do it with 3 developers, right? So the time to market, the speed to value is much shorter now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
maybe,
that becomes the expectation then. That is the level field that we have to compete in.
Awesome.
yeah, that's very interesting, by the way, because we are a company that's born in AI, right? And so we have optimized every aspect of our company to go as fast as possible with AI, not just in software engineering, but everything, right? And in coding, sometimes we are going too fast, right? And so in some sense, sometimes we have to put the right processes and the guardrails in place to make sure that, because if you are going very fast, you can create a lot of tech debt also very fast. So you have to make sure you do end customer validation. You have the right production processes to make sure that you are able to release safely, that you are able to measure the value that you are delivering. And of course, coding, we have a team that's born and brought up in kind of the AI era. So they really have their favorite AI tool. So code creation is more or less automated, but you have to think holistically. And that's why, even when we innovate in our own area, we want to make sure that the whole workflow is optimized end to end, not just a part of it, because otherwise the rest of it becomes a bottleneck.
Awesome. I want to move on to the next portion because I think we're touching on a lot of aspects here, and so we'll definitely dive into one or two of these areas. So, like, hey, you all talked about coding is speeding up. The constraints usually, once that happens, you've alluded to all of you have alluded to this as well, is that the constraints usually move downstream, where testing, release safety, production readiness becomes the bottleneck. How do you decide where to apply AI next beyond coding? And like this development lifecycle, and the sequence, and what sequencing lessons did you learn about rolling it out safely across the lifecycle? So, Nitesh or Jeremy, either one of you.
Yeah, I think it's certainly true that the constraints move away from just writing code. Kind of the generation of code is rapidly becoming one of the faster parts of the development process. I think with respect to downstream processes, we see a lot of value in code reviews. In fact, one of the first things we started to deploy at wider scale was AI agents to help with code reviews. But testing and system observability become really interesting opportunity areas that we're certainly exploring. I think our way of managing the SDLC is pretty well suited to introducing AI agents throughout, like probably as everybody in a regulated industry kind of has to have some maturity around sort of all those practices. And a side effect benefit of that is that actually introducing AI into those steps has proven pretty low friction from a kind of from an oversight standpoint. The other interesting thing, though, that you didn't mention is the constraints moving upstream. And what we're finding is that the product management, interaction design, technical design, business decision making, like these become really critical gates in taking advantage of the opportunity to write code very fast. And so it's caused us to really think about how do we optimize the way that we work and even the composition of teams sort of within my organization or across the company to try to take advantage of how quickly we can now kind of turn ideas into functioning software.
Cool. So that actually is a great segue to the next question, and I think Jeremy, I'm going to come back to you on this one, right? So you said like, hey, the top are the the bottoms up, like the upstream kind of challenges, right? But it's easy to celebrate these technical wins like faster PRs, lower MTTR, faster code delivery. But leadership ultimately, like you and your position and your peers that are on the forum here, you ultimately fund outcomes that show up in customer impact, risk reduction, and revenue. How do you translate those technical improvements from AI, like faster delivery, fewer incidents, and less toil, into that business value that your executive team actually recognizes?
Yeah, I mean, I think you outlined it in essence, sort of in the question. I mean, we have SoFi is a very disciplined business in terms of the way we think about the outcomes that we're delivering. I mean, you hit on a whole range of them. That obviously includes business outcomes like revenue and kind of the unit economics of different products, but also, member satisfaction. We aim to deliver, world-class NPS and kind of product experience. So we track a whole, bevy of metrics related to member and client experiences like that. And we, of course, we pay close attention to reliability, kind of all kinds of different dimensions of security and safety and trust as core to our ability to deliver great things for our customers. I think the way we see AI, and we can talk about the kind of story of how AI fits into that is, we have ambitious goals and outcomes we're trying to deliver across that whole spectrum of things. We think AI helps us do that in a whole bunch of different ways. For example, one of the things I'm also very excited about last year is, we deployed a kind of Gen AI backed customer support experience across all of our product suite on the consumer side. And I think we're the first kind of retail bank essentially to do that. And we did it in products beyond the bank products, including in our brokerage space and so forth. And we saw that immediately improved the member experience of support. So that we were able to really lift the NPS in measurable ways across all the different product categories where we rolled this out. So when we can point to results like that, those are easy to talk about all the way up to the C-suite and to the board level, and just talk about AI not just helping us move faster, but actually just to deliver kind of higher quality experiences and better outcomes.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Like, I mean, to be able to do all that within a matter of a year across the full product life cycle. So, congrats to the team at SoFi there. Nitesh, a follow-up, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
Very quickly, let me be very brief. I think, the way AI works and the way you can set up evals actually makes the connection between engineering metrics and business metrics much easier than before. So you can actually try to build a feature being very aligned with the objective function that you want to go after, which is a business-defined metric, and then let AI run to like improve that objective function over time, and then sort of break up the problem and have the right kind of evals, which make sure that what you're improving is actually translating into business value. I mean, we are seeing a lot of improvements. I'll not speak about the business metrics; they're all there in our earnings, etc. But if you look at, how GMV has grown, how our contribution margin has grown, and our unit economics have grown, that's a result of us being very mindful about taking that objective function, translating into the evals for which the AI can improve upon. So there are specific areas in which we can let the AI run and like try to improve these metrics by actually tuning the evals better and better.
That's
Awesome.
very awesome, by the way. As an engineer at heart, the fact you are talking about evals and business metrics in the same sentence is very impressive. Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, I mean, like, so just think about how machine learning used to work. So you used to like build these models, and you have like you have ML experts trying to tune different aspects of uh, the data that you input into the model, the algorithm you're trying to use. And you had some automation before, which would try to cycle through all of these, but that was mostly either brute force or Bayesian methods that will optimize. But you couldn't quite, set up into sprints where, there is one sprint that an AI will run in a loop and try to optimize the kind of data and take the runs take the output of these runs, use that as feedback, and then try to improve upon its results. So that sort of RLHF driven improvement in these cycles have been very effective in certain areas where the objective function is really well defined.
That's pretty impressive. That's awesome. I mean, echoing Mayank's sentiment there, like the fact that you're balancing both hats. And I think that's the modern evolution, right? It's like you can't just think about the technical aspects of things, but you also have to like, how does that impact the business side of the house as well? Mayank, I'm going to pivot this question over to you, right? And if you're talking to a lot of executives, and this will be the second to last question that we have here for the session today. You're talking to a lot of executives, like the folks and the peers on the forum today with you, right? But every large engineering org is debating the DIY right now, right? Not just whether you can build it, but whether you should build it. What are some of those themes that you're seeing emerge in financial services and other industries as well? Like how organizations are approaching this question about, DIY when it comes to solutions across software engineering?
Yeah, it's a very interesting time, right? Because on the one hand, with vibe coding and with models getting so good at creating software, you can build anything in almost no time, right? In a week, you can probably vibe code any SaaS backend out there. But on the other hand, right, it's not just about the first implementation of that. Actually, maintaining these systems for a large number of users, staying on top of the every month innovation that's happening in model layer, and ensuring that you are solving the end user problem in a scalable manner. That does require significant investment still, because as I think Sandeep mentioned earlier, that the startups are also able to use vibe coding to go that much faster, right? So just the pace of innovation has skyrocketed. So in general, when I talk to executives like this, I try to point out the trade-offs around, are you prepared to make this investment in this area? Is there some very unique context that your organization has that no one else has that will differentiate this DIY system for you? Do you have the expertise in-house to build this kind of a system? For example, for Resolve, we have a team that brings in deep domain expertise, deep AI expertise. Are you prepared to put that kind of a group together? And then, is this, even if you had the expertise, is that well spent on solving this one problem, or is it best spent on solving your core business problems? If it's aligned to your core business problem, or you have some unique insights, it might make sense, right? So in general, like even here at Resolve, we DIY a lot of systems, but then, these are usually one-offs that some engineer needs, or, we have some very specific data, or the hurdle to buy a vendor is too high. Otherwise, usually we end up buying from vendors. And so I think this is generally a framework that goes down well with others. Would love to hear from other people here if, what are their thoughts.
I mean, see, MSCI, the business that we are in, we service global investors, all the large and small asset managers, asset owners. We are a gold standard in our indexes and benchmarks that we provide to all our clients and the actionable insights that we provide. So for us, security, risk, regulation, compliance is of utmost importance. So that is one of the framework parameter. But the other parameter that has evolved, which many companies might be using, is what is core to us. That is, what is our unique process that relies on our data sets, our proprietary data sets, our clients' data. What are the regulations that we have to abide by? Data residency. What is the scale? What can justify what scale is required for that? Let's say 500 plus developers, 100 plus developers, and what is a generic use case, right? So, for example, the whole agentic SRE or use case, that is production, incident management, root cause analysis, and triaging of incidents. We thought that, this is not a strategic mode for us. So it's best to partner with somebody. And that's why we chose Resolve.ai. So we have enough generic use cases that we have. And then, of course, as I mentioned about the resource, so repeating some of that, I think the same challenges that were there, even the framework parameters for previous, when we did the buy versus build decision, was, maintenance cost, things like that, right? If you do it yourself, what is the build estimate? Because after you build starts the real cost, running it and maintaining it, run the bank, as we
100%
call it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
100% spot on. And I think I'm seeing consensus across the panelists as well with the head nods that are.
So yeah, talent is a big thing also. There is a high
I know we are
demand
coming up to time
on
here, so I want
talent.
to bring this home now,
So
right?
yeah,
We covered a lot.
oh,
There's some topics. Yeah, no worries. I know we didn't cover. There's some areas that we didn't get to cover off on, but that's like around closed loop systems and other things. But I want to bring this home to make this actionable. I want to end with what you would do differently if you had to start over, over, and what you think you will become true over the next 6 to 12 months. So it's a double-end question, right? So question is, if you were to restart your AI strategy tomorrow, what's the one area that you would invest in as your number one priority as you think about your software, as you think about your teams and software engineering as a function within your organizations? So I'll kick it off with Nitesh as for you to open.
Yeah, I can go first, but this can be long-winded.
So yeah, let's
bring
keep
me
the
back.
responses to about like
Yeah.
50,
So
the one thing, and just
yeah,
mentions on why.
let me be brief. So if I were to restart everything, I think a lot of the software development of a company operation, a tech company operation, was built around engineer time being the most valuable resource. And you spend a lot of time aligning on what the engineer is entering on the keyboard. Suddenly, if that is not the limiting factor, which means you're not limited by the number of keystrokes you can enter in a certain amount of time, then it's all about ideas. And you can test out multiple ideas in a very short amount of time. So your systems and how the company is run, our tech company is run, needs to change entirely to enable that.
Okay, so what's the one area that you would prioritize across the entire software development lifecycle?
I would actually think about like the entire process management of things and the
Okay,
planning life cycle, to give you just two brief things.
awesome. Jeremy, what about you?
If I dial back a year to our efforts, I think just more effort sooner in kind of anticipating what we would need to train people and kind of drive adoption at sort of large scale across teams, would make sense. I do think in general, we're we're kind of collectively in the industry still only kind of scratching the surface of the transformation that can probably happen over the next several years. I think there's just be a sort of a complete reinvention in the way we think about constructing software. I think trained and experienced software engineers are still going to be incredibly important to that process, but the way that we leverage them, much along the lines that Nitesh said, where it's not, the constraint isn't, does a competent engineer have time to sit in front of a keyboard and kind of bang out code? The constraints are going to move and the opportunities are going to move to all kinds of different spaces. And I think the implications of that are not something that really almost any company has like fully internalized. So I'm eager to see kind of where we get in trying to think our way through it.
Okay, so what you're saying is the next 6 to 12 months is going to be telling. That's what I'm hearing.
I think it'll be very telling. I think the 6 months after that'll be telling. Like the pace, as others have said, I think there have been other technology revolutions, including those that impact, kind of software development and delivery. But the sort of pace of evolution of this one does feel a bit different than some of the others, and so it'll be a fun ride.
Okay, awesome. Sandeep, the one thing and then a short reason why.
I think I would start with building AI governance framework before the tools. As Jeremy said, I've been through multiple paradigm shifts in my life, in my career, but this one is too fast. I think in 3 months, things change. So avoid the tool sprawl if you have the AI governance framework. Also redesign the product development cycle end to end, inception to production, and pilot it with 3 to 5 teams of developers, product owners, and analysts.
Okay,
with
awesome.
this
Mayank?
redesigned process.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And then my last response from you, like for an AI
Awesome.
native company, how would you approach that?
Yeah, I think 2026, I have no doubt is going to be the year of closed loop agents that will create, massive efficiencies in companies. And so for me, it's making sure that we stay a lean company. We have optimized our company context for agents to take, end-to-end actions, short circuiting, a lot of, human to human connection and keep driving outcomes much faster. So that's, our focus, not just in engineering, but across the company to drive that level of efficiency and move way faster than ever possible before.